Hello, hi, hey everybody. This is Natalie with the Real Recovery Podcast. Welcome.
What's up? I'm Michaelis. Nice to see you guys again.
Hi, my name is Uschi. Nice to see everyone.
And we have our guest Uschi on with us today. So welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in so far. And I also want to give a special birthday shout out.
This is no, you're not gonna do it. Come on.
You knew that was coming, right?
I actually did. I thought I was gonna avoid it, but okay.
You don't want us to acknowledge your
no, it's okay.
date.
I'm just playing. I didn't do anything for it, so I'm grateful for it. So yeah, today is my 22nd year of sobriety. So
Woo!
And I got sober when I was 22, so that's kind of cool too.
Got sober at 22 years clean and sober. Today, July 1st, is when we're doing this recording. So that's awesome. And those of you who have tuned in before know kind of like Michaelis and I's, some of our synchronicities we were just talking about before we started about, I got sober at 22. February 1st, 1999, he got sober at 22, July 1st, 99. So, but of course we didn't know each other until a year or so ago, but yeah, just a cool, fun thing. So Michaelis is awesome, carrying the message, living this work. And yeah, I mean, that's why we're having this podcast ultimately, is because of the message from this big book study that we're doing. And so, yeah, I'll just explain a little bit, if this is your first time tuning in, what this is all about. So this big book study format that Michaelis has been doing for the past 11 years, that I've been doing for almost 2 years now, I've discovered this. It's been a life transformational experience in my own recovery process. And I'm not the only one. So, you've heard Michaelis and I's stories by now. And so we have a special guest today that is going to also share her own experience. We're going to interview her about what her recovery has been like, how this specific big book study that we're doing, how she found it, how she's found it, what's happened, what her life is like now as a result of this big book study. So does that cover everything, or did I confuse people?
I think you did all right. I think you did okay. We're gonna find out.
Awesome. So yeah, Uschi already introduced herself. She is a good friend of mine, among other things. We work together in this process as well. And so
how'd you guys meet?
Yeah,
Bali.
Question.
Bali.
You want to share how we met, Uschi?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Uschi. I'm an alcoholic, and thanks for having me here. I'm very honored to be part of your podcast. I met Natalie, I think about 6 or 7 years ago in Bali. I was living in Koh Phangan and thought I had to change my life and went over to Bali. There was 2 conventions, ANNA convention and a SLAC convention. And I think I met you in one of them. And we just had a brief interaction. I just remembered you because you got such a beautiful face, expressive. And I just remembered you. She does. I think she does. And then I think we met at Susan's home. I stayed with Susan in the Monkey Forest. And you remember me, you told me, from there. I don't remember you from there. I remember you from the conventions. And then we just lost touch. And then 6 years forward, I was speaking at a WhatsApp women's group. And Natalie wrote to me, and she heard that I'd said I'm chairing a big book study in Koh Samui on a Monday. And she connected with me again, said, didn't we meet in Bali, blah, blah, blah. And she offered a big book study. And yeah, that's how we met.
Awesome.
Cool.
And then how long were you sober when you started the big book study with her?
I just had my my last recovery date, sobriety day, was the 4th of February in 2011. And I met Natalie. I just had my 9 years. And so I met Natalie when I was 9. I'm going to be 9 again, thanks to the book study on Sunday.
Oh, on Sunday. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Actually, I would love to dive into that since it's happening right now. So I changed my sobriety date as a result of the big book study process, and I shared about that in my episode. And Uschi also has her own story with that. Would you like to share about that?
What if it's like everyone's just like, oh my God, does this mean that we all have to like change our dates? Is that what this process is? Like, you know what I mean? This is like the book study from hell.
Everybody doesn't change their sobriety date, but
It's really
yeah,
funny.
I
I
have.
believe when you have skeletons in the closet, they will come out, and then of course it's up to an individual, But I think it triggered a lot of people when I changed my dates. Like, what happened the first year and a half of my first year and a half of my recovery? I got sober in Perth when I was 3 months sober. I came to Thailand through circumstances and started my recovery in Phuket. And after a year in Phuket, I met some people from the Caribbean, went over there. It would be a dream to work on yachts. So I started cooking on private yachts. And, but the yachting industry, apparently 95% of people relapsed. And because, it's very hard to get to meetings. So the thinking comes back. And I remember at the time, I had a tooth abscess. I took some Valium. Then I didn't tell the dentist I was an alcoholic and drug addict.
Your halo is back.
Oh, my halo is back. I'm lying.
He's an angel. We were all wondering.
The halo's back because
Those
I
of you
changed
who
my
are-
recovery date. That was the sign. I'm an angel now.
If you
This is
can't
awesome.
see on Zoom, if you're just hearing, she has a filter. Well, it's real, but you can see her halo filter if you're not watching. So
That was
anyway,
Scott talking. That was Scott talking.
now it's gone again, but go ahead.
So I was really, I couldn't get to meetings, thinking came back. And I just sort of slacked my program, alcohol started looking good again. I served alcohol. I didn't drink, but I played out in other things, I remember going to a dentist, having an abscess, not telling him I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. So he gave me something which I found out was Oxycontin, right? But it made me feel good and took the pain away. And someone on the boat, that is Oxycontin. I never heard of it before. And he told me, what it is. And I said, I don't care, because I wanted to feel, I didn't want to feel more. I wanted to, cut the uncomfortable feelings out again. And but I sort of put that under the carpet and I drank alcohol-free beer. I had cough mixture with alcohol in it. It was a slippery road. And after a couple of years, I just left the yachting business anyway, because I could see I was heading down to a relapse. But anyway, sort of 9 years later, when I started working the book with Natalie, and she told me her story, how she came about changing her recovery date, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, And we were not even in the book. We just started talking. We just started the book. Wasn't even that whole paragraph about, like experimenting, thinking, can you get away with it? But it just came up. And what happened for me, all of a sudden, my serenity was gone. And that's my most precious gift, my serenity. It was just gone. And then it was on, when it's on. Should I change my recovery date? Should I not? So I was praying on it. I have a God box. I wrote it in the God box. I asked friends. And of course, some people said it's between you and God, which was the best, answers. But of course, some other people say, oh, you didn't drink. That's the main thing. Don't be so fanatic. And other people, so there was a lot of different opinions. And I think it also stirs up in people their own stuff, And so I knew in the end was between me and God. I had one older lady who's 30 years in recovery. And she said, I know you well enough, Uschi. If you don't change your recovery day, you will never get peace again. And that freaked me out. And she was right. And, and I prayed on it. But it was, it's only a year and a half. It was really when I last had, mind-altering substances. But I still was quite attached to it. And so I have this deck of tarot cards. And I asked my higher power, please just give me the answer. Should I change it or not? And I shuffled and shuffled. And there's one card in the deck that says yes. And that's the card I picked
Really?
out of 45 cards. And I mean, how can it get more clearer? But the minute I did it that day, I changed my recovery date. I announced it. I felt free again, and I wasn't even aware that, I used to share this at AA meetings and, and I used to say, well, I'm not in NA, so I wasn't alcohol. And some people used to look funny at me, but I just ignored it. We're so good in denial. But the minute I did it, I really felt free. It was something lifted off my shoulder. And I felt it was something I sort of put under the carpet. It was a closet in my, skeleton in my closet. And I felt so freeing, and I didn't know the exact date, so I chose the 4th of July, Independence Day. That made symbolically sense, yeah. And then I went back, so I had 2 8s, and I'll have 2 9s, and 8 and 9 are my favorite numbers anyway. 8's the number of abundance, and 9 is a very spiritual number in Thai. So yeah, I'm actually good, you know. I got to celebrate both birthdays twice. And yeah, it just was really freeing. I remember, you know, when I picked that yes card, I mean, that also really strengthened my faith that there's someone there really looking out for me and knowing what's good for me, you know, and I love that. So that was a really accelerating experience.
So you changed it to July 4th in a couple days from now, and you will have how
9 again.
9 again.
Yeah, so 2 8s and 2 9s.
Okay, awesome. Well, I love that.
I went a year and a half back, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what inspired you to go through the book with Natalie?
Well, I think what inspired me, I liked Natalie, and I liked the courage she had to change her recovery date and the rigorous honesty. I mean, that was huge, you know, going from that time to back to a year, whatever it was at the time. And I really admired her for that. And, you know, for me, it's like recover. I came in as a compulsive liar, probably like all of us. And I think you don't go from compulsive liar to rigorous honesty, you know, more but like the peeling of the onion, more with the real. I actually changed my recovery once before. When I was 2 months sober, I came to Thailand and hung out with my sister and her friends, and I actually had a few puffs on a joint. And then I started going to NA when I was 5 years, and a woman shared, she's been 12 years clean, and she had a glass of champagne, big deal. And she said, they all say I should change my date. What do you think? And I said, well, you did have a drink, maybe you should change it, you know, being self-righteous. And then it hit me, oh my God, I had a joint with 2 months. So I changed it then already with 4 years. So that was a little bit more honesty, you know, but I think the honesty just grows with the years. And when Natalie shared her story, I think that's what I needed. And I think there's no coincidences, you know, God put me and Natalie together so I could get rid of that old skeleton in the closet. And yeah, and just the way she was that honest inspired me. I wanted to work with her because I felt she's the real deal, you know, like they're so easy. We all know how to talk, but walking the walk by changing your date by that much, I was very impressed. And yeah, and that's why I wanted to.
Did you feel like anything was missing in the sobriety that you had up until the book study?
Yeah, you know, I was like 9 years sober, living on a beautiful island. I had 8 sponsees. When I was 5, we started Coda here, so I had quite a few Coda sponsees. I was taking people to the NA steps, the AA steps, the Coda steps, and then I started using the Big Book Awakening, step 1, 2, and 3, because the questions were easy, just to give it to the sponsees, you know what I mean? Like, but I had no real recovery, and I was grumpy. I was most of the time. I thought I'm living on this beautiful island. I'm sober. I got friends. I sponsor people. You know, I thought I was working a program. I didn't have a sponsor since I was 2.5 years sober. So I made up my own rules. And sometimes I was, you know, on a small island. Sometimes I was the old timer. And we don't call it old timer. We call it long timer, by the way. We don't like that word old.
Oh.
So, you know, and all of a sudden I think my self-righteousness popped up. I was sponsoring a lot of people. I thought, you know, I was not humble anymore. I wasn't teachable anymore. I got it back into my ego. And I couldn't understand why everyone was annoying the crap out of me. You know, people didn't turn up or people didn't do what I told them to do. So I had this whole thing of, you know, if everyone would just do what I want them to do, I would be happy. That's the space I was in. And
that
you know,
sounds so familiar.
Totally.
Right.
Write that
You
in
know,
the book.
you know, exactly. And, you know, going to meetings, I judged everyone. I felt judged by everyone. I was totally in my head, you know. And yeah, I always had close to my higher power, and I was practicing my faith, I thought. But I was so irritated by people because I didn't really have a focus or a program myself. So I did a little bit of everything, you know. And so, yeah, I wasn't a happy camper, like the Australians say, when I met Natalie. And I always believe when God puts someone in front of me, there's a reason, you know. So when she offered it was for me a no-brainer, yeah. I had read the book with other people, but did I really read it? You know what I mean? Now I'm reading the book with Natalie, like word by word. And often I go, I've never read this before. And I've read the book with so many people. Maybe I was ready. Maybe they say, when the student is ready, the master comes. That's how it felt. There was time. It was time for change, and I didn't know what I had to do to find my serenity again, which was not there anymore, or very sporadically. But I got shitty with people all the time, because I was one of my biggest defects is self-righteousness, and it was at its best, it was quite flared up again. So I wasn't happy, and so I was ready to try anything, and I was impressed by Natalie's, honesty.
I think one of the big things, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, is like this way of working with others is that the kind of the come from is a different attitude or from a different space.
Yes.
So can you share about that? Because you're talking a lot about like having all these people you're helping, but then feeling like being more in that traditional sponsorship role of, I'm up here and the sponsees down there. And so I know better. So what's shifted as a result of this work and how you work with others?
I think one of my favorite things I heard in AA was take the action and surrender to the outcome. Used to be my favorite thing, but I didn't live it, right? So I took the action, I worked with someone, but I expected the outcome, right? I didn't hand over the outcome. I was not, I remember when you were telling me your sponsor is very hands off, like in a way, like he doesn't get upset when people don't turn up and so on. And for me in the beginning was like, but how you make people accountable, and it's like, well, God does that really. And what really hit me that I remember when we wrote that the first thing, the sponsor is not to make me dependent on a sponsor, but in all me to become dependent upon God. Sorry, a sponsor cannot save him or herself, and that really hit me. And also when we read on page, was it 17? Let me just have a look, because that really hit me hard too, I think. And then it was a very slowly process that we have no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful, that there is no fees to pay, no access to ground, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. They're the conditions we have found most effective. And there was another like you feel sometimes like a slot machine when you do this work, another penny dropped, and I felt, that's exactly where it reminded me of what sponsorship is about. It's just being of service, and I can't save people, God can save people. But I knew all that, but because I wasn't really in the book, I think I went back to my old ways. And the way I grew up in Phuket, it was like big book sampa and was a lot of tough love, which I maybe needed at the time, so I couldn't manipulate. It was all men, older men in Thai with their Thai wives. And I always remember walking into a meeting going, these old men with their Thai wives are going to keep me sober, you got to be joking. But obviously there was no women in Thailand. There was 2 women in Phuket. And now in Koh Samui, there is so many here now. And I think God probably plunked me to Thailand to not get distracted by men, I think, first thing. And then also, so there's more women in recovery now. Yeah, so I went back to the old ways of the self-righteous ways, and I think it happened gradually. First, I was completely your ways, like what? No one is going to be accountable if they don't turn up. And I love that saying. That really hit me home too. I said to Natalie once, we talked about what if you rush home and have a 4 o'clock appointment and then that person doesn't call? And then she said, I'm going to ask Michaelis. And he said, well, do something you love. And that really hit home. It's like, it's not I have a 9-to-5 job and 5 children and a husband to feed, I'm single, I live in a beautiful island, I work for myself. If someone doesn't show up or cancel, what's the big deal? It's just my ego, taking it personal, It's like they're not showing up. I'm so important, they're not showing up for my importance, for my meetings. So I think, I was back in ego, and it trashed my ego slowly by also through logic and reading the book and having these paragraphs saying that. And I know I can't save people, that only a higher power, God can, but I just forgotten, what I mean? Like the ego took over, and this has just been a reminder of, we're all in the same boat, we're all equal, and since then, we've been doing this now almost a year. I have no attachment. I have people saying they want to do the big book and then I don't hear from them. I don't write even and say, I thought you want to do the big book with me. I just don't chase anyone anymore. I'm completely relaxed about it. If they don't turn up, I hop in the pool or do something else, and that gave me more serenity. I don't have the expectations anymore. So I'm actually now living a little bit like handing over the outcome, and that actually gave me freedom, but it took time. I was kicking and screaming in the beginning. I'm not doing it like that. That's, they're newcomers. You have to tell them what to do. They told me what to do. And yeah, now I realize that's not the way, because it's just going to upset me. And my serenity is what's really at stake. And if I'm not serene, I'm useless to everyone, But it took time. It took a bit of time.
So like, I want to hear actually about like the process between how you used to work with people. And so then when you got introduced to Natalie in this process, like how long did it take for you to start implementing this new process in your life? What was that transition like? I'm curious about that, because I think a lot of people struggle with that,
So I think in the beginning, when I had the first person I started to work with, this was a person we did it in different ways. We did the NS steps together. We did the big book study in different ways. And we're sort of friends, was not someone I tried to control anyway or tell what to do. And she totally loved it from day one. And we used to laugh a lot. It's like, we never read that. And we read the book together 4 times, So she was my first person. And I got to practice with her.
Sorry, how long after when you started working Natalie did you start working with this woman?
Straight away.
Like immediately?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
I told her, I said, hey, I got this new big book study. And I changed my recovery date, and I'm all really excited about it. And then I have another sponsee. Since 9 years, she was my very first sponsee, and I told her about the big book study. And I think it's when you're excited about something, everyone gets affected by it. So she was straight away in it. And then I had another girl who was in and out of the program for 8 years and couldn't stay sober. And I said, hey, you want to try that? So I became a sponsor. She just celebrated 6 months and is completely, and she's got 2 people herself. She's going to take through the book.
Awesome. So
and,
good.
And the little successes and what actually happened, I can't tell you how when it shifted, but I think I was so excited and happy doing the book that I was no need to tell someone what to do, because we were just getting together and getting into the solution and the book. And what I actually love about it too, everyone sort of should have an opportunity to sort of vomit how bad their day is or whatever. But then, like after that's done, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then let's get in the book and get into solution, Because when you first come in, I'm just another addict, alcoholic, I'm not a finance advisor, I'm not a marriage counselor, I'm not a life coach. But all of a sudden, I thought I was, But when I'm in the book gives us all the answers, I don't have to come up with answers. And that was really, I think, what shifted, that the book gave everyone the answers. So I didn't have to give the answers. So I didn't have to think, I'm that person they look up to and want to hear what to do, And from giving people advice, also to saying, pray for guidance, stick it in the God books, where before I used to give more advice. And it's one thing I learned in Coda: don't give advice unless you ask. But the state I was before, I did it anyway. It was just because I wasn't well spiritual,
Well,
and then just working.
It's taxing too, right? To be the advice giver all the time, and that's when the expectations get tied in. All that stuff.
Yes. And I heard you speaking in a meeting, and you say, "I'm no one's guru." That was another thing that stuck, because it's. It's so easy to fall back in ego, and this whole program is about getting out of ego and into your heart, and staying humble, and being humble is probably not my favorite space, being humble and vulnerable, but, the book made me more humble, and the book gave a lot of answers to the people. So I wasn't felt I was put on the spot, because it's all in there,
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest tweaks, because as you've probably heard, and whenever I shared my story, I hated sponsoring. I just hated that word. It felt like so much pressure. I'm not good at it. I don't want to do it. It's too much expectation, the giving advice and worrying it's just too much. And then one of the early things when I was working with Michaelis and started working with others was like, because all this clarity comes, all of the, there's so much clarity that's come from this work. And it's easier to see things in other, not as judgment, but it's just, we can just see things. And so I'm like, what do I do if I see something, how do I, and he's like, well, ask a question, ask them, what do they think about this? And I just was like, oh my God, like that's such a shift, taking the ego out of it. And, oh, I know what you need, or I know what's best. Like, just ask a question.
I think before I was more like reading the book with someone and then I can't even say the word, interpreting my version of what I thought it's about. And now I feel I don't do that anymore. I just sort of read the book, and then I don't know what it is now, but it's just because of the highlight and the underlining, and the way you pass it on and you pass it on to people. Then the book explains itself, I don't have to put my 2 cents in it and maybe just give my opinion. It might be completely wrong anyway, or not, it's just my wisdom. Now I'm feeling it's the book wisdom that talks. That really what I think changed for me, and gradually all that happened. And of course, working with other people, it's very different when someone takes you through it, but when I started taking people through it, it's a whole nother level of understanding, I find, like then repeating or explaining what you told me to someone else. And everyone says that when they work with others. And all of the people not all, 2 of them are working with other people as well straight away. And they're working with other people as well, and everyone loves it. And you know what I love about it the most? It's so simple. I've done so many 4 steps with 20 sheets on the internet, download how to force they complicated. But 6 and 7, oh God, use the 12 and 12. There's nothing in there. I mean, I'm only on 5 at the moment in that. But how to do the first step, just by writing your experience you relate to build story, and what I mean. And it's just simple, and it's just by the book. I remember I was in Boston in this newcomer meeting, 200 people, and that guy said, whatever you do with the big book, don't get creative. It works as it is, right? And that always stuck with me. And I thought over the years, I got creative, like, oh, there's not enough in it. I have to have side bits on it. And I like simple. I'm learning more and more recovery. Simple is best, so I can just stick by the book. And it's really simple. We do it how it's done. And then whatever opinion people have, it's theirs. I love the set aside prayer. And I wanted to change that straight away. Shouldn't that be with you, God? And Natalie said, no, it's called the set aside prayer for a reason.
Takeaway prayer.
The takeaway prayer. What? See, I'm already changing it to set aside. I want set aside prayer.
What do you say about it? About takeaway versus set aside?
I don't really say anything about it. I just follow direction. I don't call it really anything. It's just the prayer that I say before I read the book with somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. Because one time you told me, like, you don't want God, you don't want it set aside, because that implies you can take it right back. But if you say take away, that means like take it away.
Well, that's true. I guess I meant like I don't label it, like I don't call it a name. It just is what it is. Yeah.
It's basically saying stay open to new experiences, right? That's how I got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that prayer is quite sticky. I mean, I totally jazzed it up myself, but I was also watching the videos and just doing it by myself at that time. But
it was hilarious. I'd say the prayer, and then like Natalie would say a prayer, but it would be like this epic, like 5-minute dissertation prayer of like set aside all these different things. I was like, all right, cool.
One day he was like, why do you say that? I'm like, oh, well, this is the prayer. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, but it was like that set aside prayer. And I like the set aside prayer. So I made it into what I like. And he's, you were just like, okay, but that's not the prayer from the book. I'm like, oh, so I changed it. Then I went back to every single person, and it was like, 13 people. I had to go be humble and say, hey, I passed the prayer on. I mean, it wasn't, but I love how we're not like rigid about it either. You weren't like, bah, it was just like, well, that's not what it was. change it. I mean, it's just, that lack of control and that we're talking about here with Uschi.
Yeah, totally. My buddy Marcy, who will probably be on this show at some point too, because he's hilarious, he passed on a new experience with you, not just an experience with you. And so literally everyone in Bali has that too now. So it's really funny.
That's
I was reading this part in the foreword of the second edition, right? So Bill just meets with Bob and he tells him basically Dr. Silkworth's like conception of the disease of alcoholism. And then what Bob does is he begins to pursue the spiritual remedy with a willingness he'd never before been able to muster. And it was really just because he finally got the information about what his deal was and why he was doing that stuff. Because he was already introduced to the Oxford group. He knew about the design for living and all that stuff. I needed a relationship with God, but it didn't like come together and make sense, right? So I kind of applied that to when I was finally introduced to the circle and triangle. Even though I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for a while and knew the concept of like, you can't keep what you have unless you give it away, and why I need to go to meetings and all that stuff like that, like it never really clicked until in this process, it was explained to me in that way. And because it was explained with me and I like had that intention of why I'm working with people today, which is to connect to God, I actually had the experience of connecting to God through that process. And I'm wondering if anything like that happened for you, where just getting this sort of, spiritual awakening knowledge kind of made certain things click for you and allowed you to have an experience with them that was different from what you were doing before.
I think maybe before I was playing God.
Yes.
To sum it up in a nutshell, and when you play God, then you sort of, I like that saying, you close down from the sunlight of the spirit, and then God has no room in there. It's probably God's probably around, but I was being controlling, and I think once I stopped playing God again, then God could come in more. It was not me thinking I have to tell people what to do, and me thinking I have all the answers, and no one's doing it right but me. And once all that stuff was gone, then I could have, experience was like an awakening. Oh, I'm actually not in charge. What a relief. I knew that, but I've forgotten, and once I was not in charge anymore, my life became sweet again, like the minute we say expectations is a resentment under constructions. And I was living my life full of expectations, thinking, playing God and thinking people need me to tell them what to do. And once I dropped that, and I did see that in that, what you mean about the triangle, right? I did some of it, but I did the service, but the service, I used to have this thing, I'm doing people a favor by working with them. That's what I used to believe, they can be lucky that I work with them, or, I take the time out to work with them. Why they're not grateful, instead of the real change for me happened. That's probably was another awakening, was like, I'm working with others to keep me sober.
Totally.
And I completely forgotten that. That was just not in my thinking anymore. I'm doing you a favor when I do the steps with you, not you keep me sober by working together.
They're doing you a favor, right?
Yeah.
Like they're your blessing, actually.
Yes. And that was just not out completely. And when I first came in and I had my first sponsor, and I knew all these things, but over time it's just circumstances, not working with a sponsor, not really probably being in the book, and then doing the other fellowships as well. It was very watered down. I used to think AA doesn't give me enough. I need Coda, and I love Coda. It's a great program, but foremost, I'm an alcoholic and an addict, Yes, of course, I'm codependent. But that was really like, I thought AA is not giving me enough. People don't talk about emotions. It's not deep enough. And I don't have that anymore at all. Since working the book, everything I need, I get from this book now. I don't even go to Coda anymore. Other fellowships. This is just giving me everything I need. But there was that shift of, I'm not doing anyone a favor by working with them. I'm just being of service. I got back in that how it's now. I say every day again. Or since I worked the book, actually, I say again, how can I be of service today? And I didn't say that anymore. It's more like, don't send me sponsors who piss me off.
I have a question. So you said you're working with a number of people and a couple of them are taking others through the process as well.
Yeah.
How do you see, I mean, do you see a difference in the people that are working with others versus the ones that you're just taking them through and they're not helping others?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. There is that, I don't know how to explain it into words. When you learn something, but you don't pass it on, it just stays with you. And I think the growth happens when you actually pass it on. I don't know how that works or why it works, but, and then also that feeling that makes you feel good when you sort of pass something on and then the other person gets something out of it, not because out of ego saying, oh, look at me, I've passed this on. When you see the light in their face and how much serenity they have by actually passing it on to someone else. Like that girl who's 6 months sober, when in the beginning, when she was 4, and I said, oh, in the beginning, I said, find someone. Oh, no, I'm far too shy, I can't do that. And then she come up with 2 people and she's so excited about it, you know. That's completely changed her recovery by having someone else to pass it through, because we all think, especially in early recovery, we've got nothing to say or we're insecure, or we're shy. But if we stick by the book and just pass on what's been passed on to us, you know, you don't have to be Einstein. You can just pass it on as it was passed on to you. So that whole fear of fucking it up or doing something wrong just disappears, you know. But there's definitely, I think, people who pass it on have a much higher level of serenity. Yeah. And you know how when you see someone else's, you know, light comes on when you work with them in the book, because it's really so many pennies drop, you know. And I really feel like I'm reading it for the first time. It's really bizarre. And I've read this many times, but I was just not that presence. I didn't have that presence. And maybe I wasn't ready before, but then I read it with someone that's sick 4 months sober, you know. And what's the nice thing with her, she just couldn't stay sober. And something just clicked with the book. We were on step 2, and how's that for a God job? She's moving back to the UK, and she really wanted this apartment for her and her daughter, but there was 30 people or whatever applied for the apartment. And she said, I'm never going to get it. And then the next day she said, oh, my dad knows the real estate agent. And I felt she's going to get it. I said, you get it. No, I won't get it. So many other people. And we were doing step 2, and she got an email. She got the apartment. So she came to believe in that moment, you know, like it was such a God job, such a sign of, you know, you're doing step 2, you know, you come to believe there's a power greater than yourself, and bang, you got, you know, that thing that was perfect for you in your life. And that's how she came to believe. And so even someone that knew, and what I love about this program too, you know, like I had almost had a bit like 9 years. I feel like a newcomer again. That's really how it made me feel, you know, but it can work with newcomers or people, you know, done around for a few years as well. It's a new experience, you know.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to me that people who are not passing it on don't really get the benefits out of it, because if you don't pass on the big book, it just becomes another self-help book, you know, which is essentially just another book that's giving you self-knowledge. You know, you might have all these spiritual awakenings, but you don't actually have an experience with the solution, right? Yeah. And our problem is rooted in self, you know, so it's self-centered thinking. It's thinking about, you know, how the world is affecting us, how the world is perceiving us. It's being in fear of all those things. It's living in like self-pity. Then the only solution for us is to get out of self. And the book, besides the text and what's actually in it, like the real magic of it is the practicing using it to get out of self. So without that element, you actually don't heal what's wrong with you, right? You just learn stuff and then get frustrated that you can't or don't have the power to apply the stuff you learned in your life consistently, which creates more feelings of failure and defeat, right? So without that component of actually using it to help others, you know, it's it's like every.
And when I talk, when I listen, I'm still a little bit in self, even if it's, you know, letting things in. But I feel when I talk, when I'm the one passing on and talking, I get out of self. You know what I mean? Totally. But when I'm the one receiving it, I'm still processing it in self, which is great. I suppose that's the first step. But then when you pass it on, I don't think about myself. That's a nice relief, you know. That's my experience, because you just pass on you pass on, the wisdom of the book. And so there is no room to think about me at the same time.
That's awesome. What a relief that is, right?
I think it's important to, I did work with somebody once. It was so funny because, I mean, if you work with people who have been around, likely they've done a big book study or they know the book. But so I started working with this woman, she had 10 years, and I go to show her the symbol and she's like, oh, I've already got this in here. I'm like, oh my God, she already knows this book study. She already knows the symbol. Like, what am I going to do with her? It's like, well, you can still do it. It doesn't matter. But her symbol, for those of you listening that don't know, the AA symbol, we break down the program using the symbol just very quickly, but it's unity, service, and recovery is on the circle. And the way we break it down is, we heal the body. Wait, what am I saying?
Let me do this part for you.
Body, spirit, mind.
Body, mind, and spirit. But the point is that in her symbol, we have it that it's 12th step work. Very specifically, that is the service that we're talking about here. Her symbol said sponsorship. And I was kind of like, oh, well, that's not what we're talking about 12th step work, taking other people through this book study process. So I feel like we've got the purest form of that. And I feel like, and I was one of these that thought, oh, service, well, I'm chairing the meeting. I have a service position. I make coffee. I'm sponsoring. That's not what we are doing here. I think what we do is so much more powerful. So I like to make that distinction because people will say and think they're in service, but it doesn't give that benefit. I don't know if you guys have anything on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when I'm taking a commitment at a meeting, being of service, I'm not in the book, so I'm not treating my mind. I'm just treating my body, and maybe I'm treating my spirit. But without that mind component, right, which I only get from being in the book, then my mind can start lying to me about the service, which means I can start getting resentful. I can start getting expectations. People are not showing the gratitude that I deserve. People are not appreciating me. Like, why are they getting these opportunities in their life? I'm doing all this service, right? Because this mind thing is always running and it's creating all these stories. And so if I don't like actually do something to treat that part of me, which is only going to be in the book, because that's where the recovery is found, then the service can easily turn into something that I'm resentful for. Actually, and feeling is bogging me down. So, that's why sponsorship as it is today, where people are, like you said, we're like being people's therapists, where it's all coming from here and the ego and the pride is driving it. I'm not in the book. So yeah, I might be helping that person and I might be in front of another alcoholic. So again, there's that spirit body component, but I'm missing the mind component. And that only happens in full circle of taking people through the book, where I get to actually treat myself while working with someone else and helping them see something too,
What I like, I mean, the book says nothing ensures us as much immunity from staying sober than working with others. And I was brought up or been around, you had to do the 12 step first before you could help someone else.
Right.
And what I love about this process is I can do one session with Natalie, I can be a newcomer and I can take someone through that one session straight away. And I love that. And like I said, that girl who was only 4 months sober, or 6 months sober, taking someone through. It's like, don't I have to do the 12 steps first? And that's what I was told. Do the 12 steps before you can sponsor someone. And with this one, you actually go straight into 12 step. You don't even need to do 12 step work because you're in it already, and that gives you also a feeling of that we're all equal. It's not like, oh, done the 12 steps, now I can sponsor people. And that separates you already, But if someone with 4 months can take someone through that, whatever the time really doesn't matter. It's timeless, the program. And I really love that anyone can take anyone through. It doesn't matter of times or if they've done the steps or whatever, as long as they're sober, and that's the first time I ever experienced something like that. And I think it's exactly what the book's about, working with others and you don't have to drink again. It's very simple, really.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, once you get to like, let's say the 9 step promises, right? And you actually break those down and read them, you can't really experience those promises unless you've been working with people the entire time that you've been getting to there in the first place. Because selfishness and self-seeking doesn't just slip away unless you're practicing selflessness, right? You don't get to see how your liabilities become your assets unless you've been working with people and talking about the struggles that you've been through to use those things to help others, right? So helping others is really like what even makes any of these processes, I mean, these promises possible. So, this idea of like, you can't help anyone until you've gotten through all 12 steps or until you've had this amount of time sober is because of this sort of nouveau idea of sponsorship where you're essentially someone's life coach, and the director of their problems, So it's like, I mean, I don't want to call somebody with 3 days of sobriety to figure out how to handle my, relationship stuff in my life. But if they have 3 pages of the book that I've never seen before and a way to break it down for me that I've never heard before, and again, like you said, they can't fuck that up. They're the book's there. It's not their message, it's the book message. So I mean, that's what I love about this thing too, is it gets people healing immediately,
Yeah, and you stay straight away in the solution,
Totally.
Getting out of self.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 2 months sober, I was in Perth, I went to this meeting, and some things just stuck with you. And this woman was saying, she went to Mecca, she went to the pyramids, she was looking for the answers for the spirituality everywhere all her life. And she said, but everything I need to know is in this book. And it always stuck with me, but I never sort of believed it, so there must be more. like all of us, we have all these other books open every, 10 books at the go. But now for me, it's just like, and I believe that too. That's why I looked in other programs to find solutions. But everything I need, everything I need to stay sober and to heal is in this book. And so nice to just have one book again.
I know. So good and simple, for sure.
Simple, easy does it, huh? That's a hard one for me. Easy does it. I want to complicate everything. If it's that easy, it can't be good, but I'm learning that as well. That's another lesson I learned from this book. Keep it simple. Easy does it, and that's such a relief because we all have crazy minds, If I can keep the big book study simple, that sort of simplifies my life as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think anyone have anything else?
No, I think I've said everything.
This is a
one more thing that really also hit home. That one more thing when we wrote that down. I have to swallow my pride before my pride swallows me.
No, it's God, please bury my pride.
Bury my pride before my pride buries me.
You don't have to swallow here, okay? Come on, slow down. The Me Too movement is still fresh. Let's chill out.
It's your birthday. Come on.
Come on. I'm the guy here. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Jesus.
I had to say that because I didn't want Michaelis thinking I'm passing it on wrong either.
That's
I didn't read it because it was here it is. Yeah, okay. You know what I mean? That's
I know. Right? That was my pride.
That was back in pride, and it was swallowing me up.
Right on.
Yeah, that was a good moment of like, aha, that's what's been happening to me, because the opposite of humility is pride, right? So I knew I was in pride, not in humility, and doing this big book study got me back in humility, some days more, some days, less, but I'm on, perfectly imperfect, work in progress. So, yeah.
It was cool to like look at the many facets of pride too, because it really infects all areas of our life, whether it's the low self-esteem or the arrogance, either we think that, we are above the solution, so we don't need it, or we think that we're too fucked up for the solution to work for us, but either way, it's pride is the great mind closer.
Yes.
And so, when I got to see like how pride was burying me, I truthfully, when I heard that the first time, I was saying that prayer all throughout the day. It was really saving my ass. So it was an eye-opening moment for me too. Cool.
Even if I stuffed it up. I'm glad you know what I meant.
Yeah. I let Natalie correct you. I don't have pride about
Okay, that's correct.
it.
That was totally
I
my
wrote it
ego.
down right. I
But it
checked.
was so funny though. It was really funny. Yeah.
Well,
That's the other thing I love. We laugh a lot when we do big book study, you know, with everyone I do it, we laugh, you know, we laugh about ourselves. I feel I didn't laugh a lot before I started the big book study again. Everything I was in my head and very serious, full of expectations, self-righteousness. And yeah, and now I can laugh again because, you know, that serenity gives you lightness, the lightness again, you know, when you're serene, then everything just flows and everything's beautiful and easy and not hard. It's not like pushing shit uphill. It's an Australian saying, you know, before felt everything was like pushing shit uphill and now everything flows again. That's probably what sums it up for me, how I feel now.
Right on. All right, cool.
awesome. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your willingness and your example and for being with us here. This was awesome fun. So
Thanks for having me. I absolutely enjoyed it. It was good having a laugh with you guys.
Yeah, of
And
course. Thank you so much
learning
for
more.
coming. We really appreciate it. And thanks for doing the work and having an experience with it. You know, it's awesome.
Thank you.
great. Well, happy birthday again, Michaelis.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Years. So happy to do this with you today. And yeah, we'll see everybody next time on the AA Real Recovery Podcast, The Big Book Solution. We do have a website. It's wherever you found this, the website will be there. You can click on it. We're on the internet. You can find out where and all that good stuff to follow, subscribe, rate, do all of the things to help us get this message out so we can help more people, because that's what it's all about.
Sweet.
Thanks, Natalie.
So
Thanks, Michaelis.
thank you guys.
Lots of love. Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you.